Welcome to Sportskeeda MMA's daily UFC news brief for February 17th. Israel Adesanya is lethal, but you all knew that. Every time Stylebender fights, he reminds fans why he stands head and shoulders above all the middleweights. Well, all except maybe Robert Whittaker, who he narrowly defeated at UFC 271. But Adesanya also stands head and shoulders above a couple of UFC superstars in this fascinating MMA statistic. MMA by the Numbers recently released another one of their incredibly informative stat tweets, and in this one it reads that 34 fighters in UFC history have landed 10 plus knockdowns. But out of those 34 fighters, Izzy reigns supreme with only 7 fights needed to reach those 10 knockdowns. Under Izzy stands the likes of Petr Yan, Anderson Silva, and the notorious Conor McGregor. So question for you fight fans, does this make Israel Adesanya the best boxer in UFC, baby? Jake Paul recently called out Conor McGregor in an interview with Rob Moore. When asked if he thought he would overtake McGregor as the highest paid athlete in the world, Paul had this to say. For sure. Yeah, without a doubt, you know? Like he doesn't even fight anymore, really. He just loses, I guess. So you can only fight so many times when you're losing every single time. For those of you who don't know, McGregor was the highest paid athlete in 2021. But Jake Paul made no small name for himself, and his bank account as well, to the tune of a fat $40 million. And that's just from knocking out has-beens in a boxing ring just to troll the MMA world. And despite losing twice to Dustin Poirier, McGregor still made huge strides in his financial endeavors in 2021, but his future is uncertain. Do you think Jake Paul can become the highest paid athlete in 2022? Or will his reign of terror over retired 40-year-olds come to a staggering end? Ali Abdelaziz recently did what he always does best by sowing chaos among UFC fighters, but this time it was between the two most dominant champions in the UFC. In a recent interview on the MMA Hour, Israel Adesanya and Ariel Helwani had similar sentiments about Abdelaziz trying to match up Stylebender with the pound-for-pound king Kamaru Usman. After Helwani expressed feeling gross about Ali driving a wedge between the two champs, Adesanya had this to say. It bothers me as well. Like, what the f*** is this peanut head talking about? I've gone on record and I said I don't like this fight. This is bigger than us. I understand where he's coming from, don't get me wrong, but you can make tens of millions other ways. There's so many other fights you can make. Nah, it's bigger than us. The great nation of Africa. We've got 3 people who are champions right now and defending it within their divisions with an iron black fist. It's clear that Izzy doesn't want to break up the trifecta of African champions, and can you really blame him? Especially when he sees new talent in Jared Cannonier threatening his coveted middleweight strap in June. Do you think Israel Adesanya has a point in not fighting the Nigerian Nightmare? More importantly, do you think Ali Abdelaziz's head is indeed shaped like a peanut? UFC 272 is only 16 sleeps away, and the biggest story leading up to the main event between Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington is their turbulent history, in a classic friends-turned-foes story. For those who aren't aware, Covington and Masvidal were once extremely close teammates at American Top Team, until a massive falling out has now led to a years-long feud that will hope to see some finality at UFC 272. In an interview with MMA Junkie, American Top Team owner Dan Lambert had this to say about the bitter rivals. Yeah, it got toxic. It got to the point where it was affecting the gym. We've had lots of fighters in the gym in the last 25 years. We've had people who love each other and people who don't like each other. Their situation got to the point where we couldn't keep it under control, and we had to ask both of them to leave. Do you think Gamebred has what it takes to change Colby Covington's life in a very drastic way? Or will Covington create chaos and inevitably fight Usman a third time? And last but not least, Israel Adesanya was critical towards the UFC regarding Ngannou's purse for UFC 270. Continuing his talk with Ariel Helwani, the middleweight champ had this to say. You can't get too personal. It's business and money is always around. There's money everywhere. You can find money everywhere. So for the heavyweight champion of the world in the UFC to be getting paid what he was getting paid was atrocious. And I feel like I don't want him to leave the UFC. It'd just be sad. I just feel like this is the guy, you know? Look at him. And he's one of the 3 kings. Ngannou's contract disputes with the UFC has been a staple headline for much of January leading up to his title defense against Ciryl Gane, and his future remains uncertain. That is, until a certain Gypsy King makes headlines calling him out and even alleging that he will box the Predator sometime next year. Do you think Francis Ngannou will re-sign with the UFC and get paid what he deserves? If Ngannou does transition to boxing, how long do you think it would take Fury to completely dismantle him? That about does it for Sportskeeda MMA's daily recap of the most exciting news from the UFC world. But before we leave, let's leave our gracious fans with a question. Which UFC champion is most likely to lose their belt in 2022? Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, Glover Teixeira, or Francis Ngannou? Don't forget to follow Sportskeeda MMA on all our social media platforms. I'm Alex, and as always, thanks for tuning in.